Peter William Sutcliffe was an English serial killer who was dubbed the Yorkshire Ripper, an allusion to Jack the Ripper by the press. Sutcliffe was convicted of murdering 13 women and attempting to murder 7 others between 1975 and 1980. He was sentenced to 20 concurrent sentences of life imprisonment, which were converted to a whole life order in 2010. 2 of Sutcliffe's murders took place in Manchester. All the others were in West Yorkshire. Fact #1 STD obsession. Being a gravedigger, a loner, and a high school dropout in an era when it wasn't exactly fashionable weren't Sutcliffe's only oddities. Peter was also reportedly obsessed with STDs of different sorts. As a child, he went to a local wax museum and was absolutely fascinated by the effects of sexually transmitted diseases on the human body and how these afflictions caused pain and misery to their sufferers. Considering the nature of Sutcliffe's later crimes, it's quite possible that he found this to be some weird, macabre inspiration. While plenty of children grow up mesmerized by the world and learning, during a stage of life where curiosity is a natural trait, it's doubtful that many of them carry a memory of deep fascination with the effects of sexually transmitted diseases on people. It's safe to say it's not a subject that too many really like to think about often. Fact #2 Paranoid schizophrenia. Peter Sutcliffe was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which played a role in the murderous atrocities he would commit. As we've already observed, Sutcliffe began hearing voices in his youth. Note that the average age of onset for schizophrenia in men is 18, with most being diagnosed in their 20s. Sutcliffe genuinely believed that the voice of God had instructed him to kill prostitutes, and thus, his murder spree was more than just a self-serving indignation or need to satiate a twisted, morbid sexual appetite. Due to his paranoid schizophrenia, the Yorkshire Ripper truly believed he was doing God's work in murdering and attacking the women he did, often with a hammer. Fact #3 Broadmoor Hospital. Broadmoor Hospital is located in Berkshire and houses some of England's toughest criminals. It's a psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane and generally the worst of the worst. Charles Bronson, a notorious madman, has been incarcerated there, as has the real-life Hannibal Lecter, Robert Maudsley. Of course, the infamous Yorkshire Ripper was housed at Broadmoor among these madmen. Sutcliffe spent approximately 30 years at Broadmoor Hospital, the toughest psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane in England, before eventually being transferred to an actual prison in 2016. Fact #4 The hammer attacks. After having his first 2 attempts at murder fail, Peter would finally find what would become his weapon of choice, the hammer. Like Peter Curtin, Peter Sutcliffe would be one of the infamous murderers to use a hammer. The nature of blunt force trauma and beating someone to death, leaving behind gory scenes of mangled faces and spattered blood, is enough to terrify and shock most. The brutality and sheer rage of his crimes helped to catapult the Yorkshire Ripper into infamy and make him feared by everyone in England for 5 full years. In 1975, Sutcliffe would commit his first assault with a hammer, when he struck a young woman whom he'd found walking alone. He knocked her unconscious and then slashed her stomach with a knife. The young woman, Anna Rogalskij, would ultimately survive, due to a neighbor happening upon the scene and forcing Sutcliffe to flee, but she suffered severe trauma from the attack. This would be the beginning of a long rampage of murder and bloodshed by the Yorkshire Ripper that would rival Jack the Ripper. Fact #5 Body count. There is some dispute as to the actual body count that Peter Sutcliffe left in his wake. While it has been substantiated that Sutcliffe murdered at least 13 victims, all of which he was tried and convicted for and subsequently sentenced to 20 life terms in prison, there is a little confusion and ambiguity regarding exactly how many people he killed. While he was rotting in a cell at 60 years old, some 30 years after the spree of murders that left at least 13 dead, investigators were still piecing together exactly how many victims the Ripper claimed altogether, with some saying that he killed 13 more people and other estimates as high as 23, including 1 man on top of all the women. It has been speculated that Sutcliffe may be responsible for a lot more bodies, Killing a man is something that Sutcliffe has denied time and time again, saying he never killed men, and that his intended goal was always to kill women.